Hi everyone, welcome back to my continuation of my do's and don'ts of relationships. Last time I talked about relationship do's. Today I'm going to talk about relationship don'ts. But before I start, I just want to ask you guys, because I know a lot of people had a few questions and whatnot, and I did a survey to find out if people were interested in seeing my other half on these videos. So I've decided to do something that I think will be fun, and I hope you guys will participate. I would like for you guys to send me questions. You can DM me or whatever. Just send me questions that you have either for me or for my husband, and then we'll put the questions together and then we'll make a video answering those questions. I think that would be fun, and at least it's going to help people that have questions, people that have things that they're wondering about and things that they would like to get addressed or whatever. So yeah, you can ask questions from a female perspective or from a male perspective, or questions that you can ask about our marriage, or both, where we can both answer as well. So yeah, so feel free to do that. You can post on my wall, you can directly send me a message, whichever way is easier for you to do, then just do that. So let's get into it. So the 5 don'ts of getting into a relationship. Number 1 is my absolute favorite that everyone hates. So it's don't have sexual relationships before marriage. Yes, I can see that some of you are tensing up already. It's fine. Just breathe through it. Just relax. It's one of those things that we like to ignore, but it is one of those things that God requires from us. I've made a video before about the importance of being abstinent. Actually, it was a series of videos talking about why it's important for us to remain celibate when we decide to get into a relationship until marriage. So just go back and look at those videos. It's my favorite because of the fact that it's one of those things that most people don't practice anymore, and it's actually a requirement. God requires that of us, and it's not for him, it's for us. But just watch my previous videos talking about celibacy, and you can understand why celibacy is so important. So that's point number 1. Point number 1 of relationships is don't have sex outside of marriage. And then point number 2 is don't play around in the gray area. What do I mean by don't play around with the gray area? A lot of us like to play around with the idea of being in a relationship when you're with someone and you're playing in a gray area where you don't know whether this person is going towards marriage or they're not going towards marriage. And that's a very dangerous zone, because if you are playing in the gray area, it means you haven't taken the situation to God, and you haven't taken the steps that I've talked about getting into a relationship. So you find yourself just falling into a relationship, and if you end up falling into a relationship, you're going to find yourself in situations in a situation where it's a relationship that is not God ordained, and a relationship that is not God ordained can lead you to a lot of trouble. So just try and avoid the gray areas where you were friends and then all of a sudden you feel like you're becoming more than friends. The moment you feel anything like that happening, you need to step back, look at the steps, talk to God about it, and go and take the right steps towards getting to a relationship, because you don't ever want to just fall. And that's what most of us do, is you just fall into a relationship, and that's just a recipe for a disaster, because you fall in love with this idea of someone, but you haven't been practical about it, and then you miss the important points, the important things about this person, like where is this person in their relationship with God, where is what is this person's family values, and all of these important things, because you just fell in love because you were enjoying hanging out and you were enjoying spending time with each other, and you were actually not realizing that you're in a gray area that's going to lead you into the danger zone. So try and avoid gray areas. Just try and avoid being in situations where you don't know if you're dating or if you're not dating. You need to whenever you find your foot getting into a situation that is not black or white, you need to step back and follow those steps, so that because sometimes a guy can just be what do they call them? You can be a time pusher. So the guy just wants to buy time, but he doesn't think that you're marriage material. So you also need to do yourself a favor, so you can see whether this person is just hanging out with you because he's just pushing time, but he has no intention of marrying you, has no intention of taking this relationship further. And by the time you find that out, it will be a bit late and you're already deep into the relationship. So try and stay away from the gray area. Okay, and then point number 3 is do not lower God's standards based on worldly expectations. And an example of that is talking about sex outside of marriage. That's a perfect example where worldly expectations, the world expects you to have sex outside of marriage. The world expects you to live with someone before you get married. The world expects you to compromise when it comes to your Christian life and your Christian walk. But you have to rise above. You can't, just because the majority in the world believes that something is okay, doesn't mean that you have to excuse yourself from what God says is right. So you always have to weigh, is this a worldly standard or is it a godly standard? And never bring down God's standards to meet your worldly expectations, because that doesn't happen. What God has commanded, God has commanded, and that's not going to change. So you can be in a situation all you want. You can be in a situation that you're not supposed to be in all you want, because it feels good, because society says it's good, because society says it's okay if you're in a relationship with someone who's married, as long as you guys love each other. It may seem good and it may seem fine, but at the end of the day, if God says it's wrong, it's wrong. Nothing's gonna change that. It can feel good all at once in your heart, and you can feel just right. You can tell yourself anything you want to tell yourself, but at the end of the day, if God says it's wrong, it's wrong. God does not have any gray areas. It's either right or it's wrong, and you need to evaluate yourself and evaluate your relationship and see if this relationship meets God's standards or it doesn't. Because the thing is, like, sometimes you find people that live together and it seems the relationship is fine and they get married and everything's fine. But the thing you need to understand is God wants you to have the fullness of what he intended for marriage. He wants you to have those blessings that come with obedience. So the moment you decide to step outside of God's will and outside of his commandments, and you decide to be disobedient, you lose out on blessings that he wanted for you. You just end up living an average life. Like, sure, they've been living together, they seem like everything's okay. Sure, it's okay, but at the end of the day, you don't get to feel and to live the abundant marriage that God wants from you. You miss out on the blessings. You miss out on the abundance. Do you understand what abundance means? Abundance means exceedingly abundantly above what God believes you should, above what you believe you should have. So what you believe you should have, God will do even more if you decide to be obedient and to stay within his will and to do things according to his will. Because society is average. Everything that society shows us, their standards are average, and everything, like, most people are living average lives. They're not living abundantly. And for you to get into the abundance of what God wants, you need to be obedient. You need to raise your expectations and your standards according to what God has prescribed and according to what God has asked of us. So don't lower your standards. If you want to really feel the fulfillment and to experience everything that God has wanted for you and promised you, you have to keep your standards up here. Don't ever lower your standards according to worldly expectations, because you're just missing out on what God wants for you. Number 4, don't ignore red flags. And that's important. I'm going to expand on it. I'm going to make a video on red flags. I'm so excited. That's one of the topics that's going to come down the road. But basically, it's like, when you see a red flag, just see it for what it is and run. Don't ignore red flags. When you're doing your vetting process, when you're going on your dates and stuff like that, don't dress up red flags as something else. You know what I mean? Like, if it's a red flag, it's a red flag. If you come and you're dressed in a red dress or you have red lipstick and he says, "Oh, I do not like women wearing red lipstick," or "I do not want you wearing red clothes," or something of the sort, that's a red flag. It's not cute. He's not trying to be protective. He's being controlling. So you need to be able to see red flags for what they are. Never ignore red flags. They don't go away, and they don't, they're just gonna get worse. Red flags is just a tip of the iceberg of what you'll be getting into if you decide to get into a full-on relationship with someone when you see the red flags already. And then number 5 is one of the things that really grinds my nerves a lot. and that's don't blame God. We do a lot of God blaming when we find ourselves in relationships that we shouldn't have been in, and then those relationships go left, and then we start talking about, well, you know, that's the cross that I was made to carry. But I mean, newsflash, no, it's not the cross that you were made to carry. You gave yourself that cross. Don't put God into it. You never asked God about this relationship from the start, and now you found yourself in this relationship. Now you think God had something to do with it. No, we have people that you know, you feel all these emotions. You meet someone, you feel all these emotions, they're overflowing, you love them, you sleep with them, they're married, all of these things, and then things go left and things go sour, and you decide to continue in this relationship, or you decide to continue in your disobedience, and your justification for that is, oh my gosh, but we love each other, he's my soulmate, I'll never find a love like this, like our love. As if love can ever justify disobedience. Love cannot justify disobedience. I've got news flash for you. You can be in a relationship and both of you love each other, but if your relationship completely defies what God has commanded, then your relationship is wrong. Why is your relationship wrong? Because that relationship, if you think about it, that relationship is ordained by the devil. The devil, you are pushing the devil's agenda. The devil puts the relationship in your path so he can block you from experiencing the fullness of what God really wants for you. And people think that because you've got all these emotions and all this love, then everything must be right. No, that's just the devil. The devil will always package something beautifully such that you can't deny it. You feel such a strong attraction to someone. By the way, those could actually just be soul ties, because you decided to have sex with someone outside of marriage. Now you have a soul tie. Now they're your soulmate. Technically they are, because you have a soul tie with that person because you decided to sleep with them, and then now because of this bond and all these feelings, you feel like, you know, God, surely this should be right, surely this is right, we love each other. Yes, he has a wife, but I mean, when we're together it's like electric. God has got to be in it, and then things go sour, and then now all of a sudden you're like, but God, what happened? Everything was so right, you know, I asked you to show me a sign and you showed me a sign. I asked you that if he's the one, then he must call me by 2 o'clock, and he called me. You know, every time I try and break up with him, he won't let me go, he always comes back. So that just showed me that it's a sign, because I prayed and I said, Lord, I'm going to break up with him today, and if he comes back tomorrow, then that means he's the one. No, none of that, none of those things are good enough as an excuse to be in a relationship that is not God ordained. God's commandments and God's will are black and white. Either you're in God's will or you're not, regardless of all the fluffy things that you're feeling, regardless of everything else happening around you. Because never forget the fact that the devil is also working. The devil will always work against marriage, and the devil will, or if he cannot stop you from marriage, he will make sure that at least you get married to the wrong person, and then that's the end of that. That's the end of all the plans and the beauty and everything of what God really wanted and intended for you for marriage. So yeah, those are my 5 points of relationship don'ts. I hope this helps someone. So yeah, guys, please don't forget, go ahead and send me those questions so that we can compile a video answering those questions, and hopefully that's gonna help someone. So yeah, until next time.